Jimmy, if you only had 1 minute to give music artists, managers, labels, etc., the best music marketing, music industry advice you possibly could, what would you say? 1 minute on the clock.
If you're an artist, be authentic. It's all about that. There's too much content out there, too much noise for you to pretend to be something you're not. On the marketing side, my best advice would be to find your tribe and redefine your tribe over time. Whether it's finding your musical family, trying to learn marketing tricks from artists you respect, who you feel are on your family, to see what's working and not. Or whether it's to fill your pitch forms on Spotify and other DSPs, it's always going to come back to your tribe. Now, it can change over time from release to release. It's not something set in stone, but it's a concept that you need to be aware of.
Nailed it. Great advice. And we're going to dive more into that, so you'll have plenty of time to elaborate later. But you have a pretty epic history of companies you've started, invested in, worked on. And I'll list some, and you'll probably have to correct me just because there's a lot of different brands and companies. But you're one of the founders of Marathon Music Group, which is a label and has its own subdivisions like Mahogany and other companies inside of it. Frequency was another one. Music Protocol was one I found, which apparently had a name change. You're an investor at SongTools. You teach a course at Berkeley College of Music. And there was even more that I found online. So I'll let you kind of just talk first and correct whatever I just said, because there's probably some mistakes in there. But what's your kind of current companies that you currently work on? And then also, what are some of the companies you started over your journey in the music industry?
Frequency and the Marathon Music Group, which started as Marathon Artist, are two companies I co-founded. Most of the others you listed have been great entrepreneurs or visionaries that I met through my professional journey and were kind enough to have me be part of the team at one point or help them in some capacity. But yeah, I've always liked this kind of Swiss knife approach. I think you don't really have a choice in the music industry, at least when you're not on the creative side, where your talent will be your best asset and driver of your career. But it's difficult and a bit limiting to be pigeonholed into one vertical of the music industry. And if at any point of your career you were a manager, you kind of have to be knowledgeable about absolutely all the aspects of the artist's career and be making decisions across the board. And it used to be very siloed. And I came into the music industry around 2005, and saw the rise of the Napster's years, that we were in the middle of it. And it took a good decade before streaming became more than a promotional tool and a real source of revenue, until it's now basically the main place where it's happening. And there was a lot of transformation of what each industry player would do or have to do or expected to be doing. You had, management companies becoming 360 services company, because all of a sudden you had label services and distribution at their disposal, and they had to service their clients. You had record labels starting 360 deals and therefore starting to be involved in merchandise and live. And so I think that I came into the industry at a time where the cards were being redistributed and things became more fluid between the traditional verticals. And there was room to operate with either more than one hat or align interests with the artist and management when you were on the label or wherever you sit in that picture differently.
Right. Yeah, it's true about the multiple hats thing and multiple skill set and how a lot of companies evolved. Even nowadays, I'll meet someone who started off as they were the producer slash mixing engineer, mastering engineer, and then they over the years of just working with clients end up also being an ad agency and a manager and a record label because they're just trying to help people, right? And I can imagine that back when the industry was having this transition, it was even more so the case because there was a huge opportunity. Kind of, I don't want to call it a gold rush, but it was a change, and so it was an opportunity for companies to do more than just whatever one thing they were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of two sides to that equation and that movement. When that was happening, there was very little investment from traditional music companies for developing artists. There was a period in time where it was really hard to be a brand new artist on the scene because you didn't have all the tech companies that now allow you to distribute to the world and build a fan base online and do it all alone. Investment was required, and it was very difficult for traditional music companies to be able to do that investment when physical products were going away and digital wasn't yet a big source of revenue. On the other side of that equation, it's really about trust. As someone who's been a manager, a publisher, a record label executive, once you've established the trust with an artist, with their representation, with their manager, more often than not, if we collectively want to explore an area, yes, you can go to established experts, but that means shopping around, starting new relationships, building that trust over time, or you can try to do it with a team that you already trust, believe, understand your vision, and can help you go and execute it. And I think that contributes a lot to the mix that we're in now in 2025. And the real rise of the manager, not only as the CEO of Artist Inc., but the real steward of the ship. Because there are all those options there now. And it's about taking the artist's vision, and it's the person who understands it the best who can now, go and execute across the board.
So, going back to your company, Marathon, you guys have over 200 artists.
I'm not alone.
Right. Yeah. When I say yours,
wonderful co-founders.
I would imagine it's a pretty big team at this point, right? Like 200 artists, you must, and aside from the co-founders, you could have at least probably a dozen people working there. Right?
So I ran the company from its inception to about 4 years ago, and we grew the team at that point from the three founders to a team of over 20 people. It's great to be able to do this in any industry. It's even more rewarding to be able to do it in music. We always had a different approach in our relationship with the artists, in the types of agreements that we started the company on. Your 50-50 profit share agreement, which is now a standard, really wasn't a standard in 2012. And we had to do a lot of preaching to convince uh, uh, all the people involved around the artist to believe in that vision and the alignment of interest. And so, yeah, it was a fantastic journey, and the company is doing really well now, and the journey goes on.
Yeah, and it's hard running a label. It's very hard running a profitable label, right? You don't get to the point where you have 200 artists unless you're pulling something off. Just with it takes money to make things happen and all that. But when you started off the company, I'm sure with your team, your co-founders, um, I would imagine those early years were probably pretty challenging, like getting artists on your roster, getting them to trust that you were able to pull off their vision and scale them up to where they wanted to go. So, as a new label back in the day, how did you go about getting artists on your roster? And I guess, like, what were some of the artists how did you find them in the first place?
So just before I jump into that, that 200 artists is kind of a lifetime over decade. It doesn't mean that the team is actively managing 200 artists under contract, but you do build a catalog over the years, right. And you do work that catalog throughout. So it's been great to help build that. As far as how you start, my business partners were great and had big track records, and a lot of respect in the music industry. So that certainly helped. I was the youngest and the least experienced in the trio. So that definitely helps. But the trust is two-way and is circular. I think to show that you understand the artist's vision, to articulate how you would execute that vision if you were in business with the artist, are really the two components to that. And luck also plays part in that process. But there's been a lot of longevity with a lot of artists on the Marathon roster. And for me, that's the best proof that there was something special there. If your artists decide to leave after one EP, or they stay for 3 albums, it says something different.
Absolutely. I mean, like there can be incentives for artists to leave. Like, for example, you made them so successful that they're being gobbled up by a larger label.
Oh, it happens all the time. That's the one of the big challenges of being an independent and not having the same resources as much bigger companies.
Right. I mean, and even given the fact that you work in this label, your work at Berkeley is teaching a course. I forget the exact name, but it's something along the lines of self-releasing your music online. So you're also a big advocate of artists forging the path on their own.
Yeah, massively, because it always starts there now. It wasn't the case before, but I don't know recent examples of an artist who gets signed because they're playing in their local bar and an A&R managed to be in the room. Everything is really
in the background smoking a cigar. Yeah.
Right? Everything is so stats driven that artists are expected to self-produce their first tracks, to self-release them, to do well with that, to prove that they have a fan base, to have good metrics. I mean, the amount of things that used to be sitting on the professional side of the equation and that the artists have to do on their own or with their management team up to a point where they would be considered by record labels, publishers, or even distribution companies that operate on invitation basis, is really a sizable journey. Where if we're not talking, many months, it's years.
Yeah.
And in that context, even if you're sitting on the label side, you probably want artists to be as knowledgeable as possible and have access to as many tools as possible in the first steps of their journey, because they're mostly going to be by themselves. And that was the idea behind the course I authored and I teach at Berkeley. During the pandemic, I started doing a bit of mentoring for students who were in the middle of their curriculum, and it was apparent that they didn't have a grasp on that they would put their heart and soul into writing those awesome songs. Some of them had very high production skills and access to wonderful production facilities, if they were going to music schools. And then the way they thought about the process would basically stop the moment it was uploaded into a distribution platform. And I really wanted to put together something that would put an emphasis on how much you need to prepare before you hit that upload button, and what you need to be ready to do immediately after you hit that button. So that was the idea behind the course.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some people who even who go to Berkeley or other music schools, but like, or just really talented. But I think the Berkeley student is like a perfect example because they're willing to invest in their music career. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going to Berkeley, which is not the cheapest school in the world by any means, right? It's a college, it's a private college, it costs money, and they're very talented because you have to be pretty skilled to get accepted to Berkeley. You don't have to be the best musician in the world, but you have to be pretty good. And you're taking all these classes. Your whole life is music. You have access to some of the best studios in the world and mentors and everything, and fellow musicians to record with. Like, so a lot of people I know that are at Berkeley, they're like, oh yeah, my a friend of mine works at the studio, and my other friend is like this super talented saxophone player. My other friend is a super talented drummer. So they have access to all these amazing resources for the music. And unfortunately, as you said, they upload it and then they do nothing. So they have access to all these musical resources, but they don't seem to have as much access to the business marketing side of the resources. And it's almost like their brain turns off when the marketing comes.
I don't know if it turns off. I mean, you nailed it. And I hope that what we're doing at Berkeley and the course I teach is going to help, bridge that gap. It's also the reason why it was important to me to teach that class in the production department, not the music business one, because it was really tailored to creatives, producers, songwriters, self-releasing artists versus aspiring managers and executives who probably had a deeper understanding of marketing and were more familiar with those concepts. There's a lot of introspection and research that is part of that process. During your first question, I was talking about the finding your tribe concept, which I'm a big believer in. the artist has to answer that question.
Yeah.
They
I
can
guess
get help
elaborating on the
from
finding the tribe a bit, just in case people don't know what you mean by that. Um, what do you mean by finding your tribe?
start by doing a list of 10 artists that you respect, you admire, have inspired you, you feel are close to your musical genre or niche. And they can be uh, bands that you play with locally in your town. They can be your friends, or they can be global stars. It doesn't really matter, but already to have a list of 10 artists uh, is the beginning of that journey in terms of decision making.
Mm.
And once you have that narrowed, you can really start to deploy it across many different questions and problems you're going to need to solve as you're defining who you are as an artist, preparing your content production strategy, defining the tone you will adopt on social media, defining which genre and subgenres you want to tag your music when you're uploading it to a distribution platform. When comes the time of you release your music, you start to promote it. Sometimes things work, sometimes things don't. And so, how do you benchmark that? And you can go back and check the socials of all the artists in your tribe. It will be obvious that for those who are global stars, they communicate differently and the fan reactions are different. But for the artists that are still building their fan bases, you'll start to pick up clues, and you can assume that what they're doing well might translate to your fan base as well. So, uh, you know, that journey. Another example, especially in a world of DSPs where genre is fluid,
Mhm.
because things are siloed on DSPs through playlists and moods. Um, if you are known for an up-tempo electronic based type of production, and then you release 3 songs in that lane, you're building a fan base there, and your fourth release is an acoustic ballad. There's a challenge there for the artist, because some of the editorial support, what the algorithms have associated you with, the artist that you are associated with through that process, uh, are heavily going to be skewed towards one sound. And so that's an interesting thing, to go back through your tribe and see how their acoustic ballads have performed if they're doing the same sound as you. Did they find a better way to promote them on other platforms?
Right.
Maybe this is the moment where a social platform or a DSP that is usually not the point of focus, that track might have an easier and better moment there, just because of how the platform is built, how the algorithm operates, how the fans engage with the music
Right.
there.
I mean, also different tribes hang out on different places. Like I've worked with some artists that they do horrible on Spotify, but they do great on everything else. Like I know one artist whose best platform is Pandora, another one whose best platform is iTunes, another one whose best platform is Amazon, and it all just comes down to, at least in my experience, the I always call it demographic, but it's really just the tribe, right? Like the community of people who like what you do. Some of them might hang out on different social media sites and different DSPs, and that can all change your marketing strategy.
You're absolutely correct on the fan side of it. By tribe, I really mean your artistic family. It's
Mm.
not about, it's not defining your fan bases and where they are. It's
Mm.
defining your musical family. And if you had the ability to be associated with the artist you choose to be associated with, who would they be? Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So really understanding the artist that you most align with.
Absolutely. Uh, Musically, in terms of vision, in terms of the theme behind the lyrics, sensibility, um, can be things that are common outside of music.
Now, in terms of once you, well, actually, let me back up. If you're an artist that has built a fan base doing something like, let's say, pop singer songwriter, and then later on you're trying to pivot to something like EDM, uh, what is usually you found like the what's the approach there? Like if you're trying to change the tribe that you're associating with, like you're usually all of these artists is what you associate with, and now you're doing this whole other thing. It's actually a super common thing amongst artists. Like Taylor Swift's pulled it off like 5 times, but
She's a
most
master
people,
at it.
yeah,
Um,
most people don't have the luxury of being Taylor Swift, right? And so it's a completely different story. What's your take on that, though?
um, for unsigned independent artist, I think that a very smooth way to do that transition is through collaborations. And there's never been as many cross-genre collaborations and subdivisions of subgenres as there is today. And so it's something that is perceived to have become very natural. And I think
Mm.
that if you're a pop singer songwriter and you're wanting to journey towards EDM in your example, then start collaborating with DJs, with EDM producers, lend your vocals and your top line to their tracks. And then what it will do is that it will help you put one foot in that world. It wouldn't necessarily negate everything you've built until now in terms of data itself and algorithms and associations. It will start to create a bridge between those two worlds. And then after a couple of collabs, um, maybe you can drop your full EDM track and you would have built an environment where it will be received and make sense. Um, Remixes or alternative versions, if you're not able to collaborate, um, are a good solution that kind of um, do more or less the same thing. I really recommend collaborate because all of a sudden you have two artists promoting, you have two fan bases, two release radars. There's way
Yeah.
more cross pollination than there is if you're just doing the bossa nova version and the heavy metal version of your own song. You know?
Now, pivoting a bit, back I guess to marathon even, but which is kind of the opposite of that. Instead of being independent new artists starting with $50, to artists who are on a label who might have $10,000, let's say, to promote their new release. How does that change things? You know, because there's very often the strategy for a brand new artist, marketing wise, is not the same as the strategy you have for big artists. So, what have you found there? If an artist is like, I have $10,000 to market my release, how does that change?
Well, first of all, if you're signed to a label, that would be the label's investment. And so, in taking that decision, there are expectations. So, I think there's two main difference between those two scenarios you're drawing. Um, when you're at the beginning of your journey and you have no budget, um, you have 10 targets. You want to hit them all over time. You don't necessarily have the means or control to know which one you'll hit before the other, what's the sequence, or if you'll ever hit any of them. So you're starting with low expectations, irrespective of your ambitions, which should be huge. But in a label environment where big budgets are committed, there's two things at play. First, there's a lot of coordination. If you are talking about a big album and a big marketing campaign, there's a lot of people from different companies and different teams around the artists who are coordinating the effort. There might be a big tour that's kicking off at the same time as the singles are dropping and the album is being announced. So it's a wide team effort, and the expectation is that you're gonna hit all 10 targets in the smallest amount of time possible. Your ideal scenario is that all the good news come is in within weeks or months of you starting to release the new music from the artist. You want big support on DSPs. You want radio if it's a genre that has a commercial format. You want press. You want to be on late night shows. You want to sell tickets, and so forth and so on. So
Right.
it's not so much about on one hand there's 100 and on the other there's 10,000. It's actually way more than the marketing budget itself. It's the efforts of maybe 25, 30 people working across different aspects of the artist's career, different departments, and all feeding off the efforts and the good news that are coming in, irrespective of where they're coming in from.
Yeah, I mean, because some of those things they don't actually cost money, right? Like you're talking about getting a promotion on DSP editorial playlists, for example, or performance opportunities on TV shows, which I think sometimes people can buy their way on. Maybe you know more about that than I
I
do,
mean,
but
I don't know that you buy your way on. I've not, that, but there is a cost to providing a production
yeah,
that day. So unless you're just rocking with your band and delivering a raw performance, which can be a magical moment,
yeah,
there's usually production cost involved. And also, I'm sure that you can be invited to those shows, but publicists play a big role in getting those slots, and that assumes that you have a publicity team working with you, which
right.
cost as well. So, all these hidden costs are not part of the $10,000 of marketing you were referring to, yet they're fully part of what a record label would be providing, and the kind of members of the team I was referring to.
Right, man. Well, that being said, is there anything you want to leave the people with? Some words of wisdom.
Yeah, believe in yourself, be authentic, find your tribe. It will not be a waste of time to put those 10 names on a piece of paper. And keep putting great music out there. whether you're writing the songs, producing them, you're managing the artist, or you're working in any of the companies that will support the music.
Heck yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care.